Paul Ryder, you are so welcome to Flop Culture. How are you?
I hate to be that person on a podcast who goes, finally, we got to make this happen. But definitely, this is one of those things that we finally get to make this happen.
No, truly, I'm so delighted you're here to talk about this. A long time coming, as they also say in the industry. Tell us, what have you picked as your flop?
I picked as my flop Scream 4. Like, first of all, I think you know this already, that I am a horror buff.
Okay.
And Scream to me, I think I watched Scream 1 when I was like way before I should have watched it, on my own in a dark room, terrified the life out of myself. And it almost instilled my love of horror across the board. But Scream was such a brand new entity into the film world because slashers had been done, but they'd never been done like this before. So Scream 1 and Scream 2 had been out and in the cinemas. Scream 2 had just come out onto VHS. And I remember my auntie was babysitting me and she brought me to the like VHS shop and was like, what do you want to rent? And I was like, oh, Scream 2. She was like, oh, well, that's a bit scary. And I was like, no, my mom lets me watch it. And whatever happened, there was no mobile phone, so you couldn't just text and kind of go, hey, he's saying he can watch this really horror, gory film. Can he? She couldn't answer. So good to me, being terrified in my auntie's house at whatever time of the night, watching Scream 2 and then obviously Scream 3. But Scream 4 for me, everybody calls it a flop, right?
Yeah.
Everybody calls it a flop. They actually say that it was the end of the generation of Scream. And realistically, it was supposed to start a whole brand new trilogy. But because people thought it was so bad, that was the end. Until, cut to 10 years later when we're talking about Scream 5. But it's a flop to the general public. To me, it's one of the best installments in the whole franchise.
That's so interesting because Scream 4 was actually my introduction to the franchise. Like I knew of Scream, it's iconic, but I hadn't watched it and I didn't have the same relationship that I would say you had. So then when this came out, I think this is the time, like we were teenagers, we were going to the cinema, it was like, this is out, it has this cast, like we should go. And like my friend Megan, again, as a horror fanatic kind of like you and was way more familiar with the prior films, so was like, we need to go, this is going to be so good. And I remember we went and I remember thinking, no, this is good.
Yeah.
Like this is good. But the response to it was so negative.
Even when it comes down to the money, like, there's a big talk about how much money a film can make. 97.1 million, I think, was the end figure, that they made. And although that was a really, really good figure in comparison to what it had made prior and stuff like that, and what a general new film should be making, I think that and just some dodgy reviews. But what, even the tagline of the film is New Decade, New Rules, right? With that new decade comes a whole new team of people who are watching films. And, even in the film, they talk about the internet and how it plays such a massive part. The killer was obviously filming the murders and all this sort of stuff. But with that comes people who have an opinion, who have a platform. And it just became this big, massive thing that anyone could tell people that they didn't like it. And back then, we had a tendency to listen to people a bit more who had a platform, whether it was 10,000, 100,000, whatever. Mary, who doesn't normally review horror films, was like, it was crap. And we were like, yeah, it was crap, Mary. You're so right. You're so right. Now we wouldn't listen to Mary. Mary wouldn't even have a voice, to be brutally honest.
Shut up, Mary.
Shut up, Mary. Jesus.
Shut up, Mary.
Stop talking, Mary. Nobody likes you here.
Okay, so what happens in Scream 4 then? Like, where are we in the midst of this story and who are we with?
We are returning to Woodsboro, right? And basically, we're dealing with a whole new cast. Now, obviously, with the newer iterations that have come in the last kind of couple of years, 6 and 7, or 5 and 6 and 7 to be released next year, we're dealing with a new cast. But this was returning to Woodsboro, which is obviously where Scream 1 was set. And Scream 3 should have been set, but I think it was due to something that was happening in the news. They had to take it away from Woodsboro.
The Columbine school. That's again why Scream 3 is an interesting flop, because people were saying it wasn't as gory and it wasn't as violent, but that was a direct response to commentary at the time around how media was potentially like influencing and impacting these events.
Yeah.
So like it's interesting then to go for, and I'd be interested to hear your comparisons to Scream 3 to this film. But anyway, carry on. As you said, it was supposed to be set in Woodsboro, but it wasn't. It was set on kind of like a film set. So then we're back to Woodsboro for this film.
Yeah, I have a lot to talk about on Scream 3, by the way.
Incredible, okay.
Like 100%.
Okay.
So we're back to Woodsboro. Sydney Prescott has finally written the book that everyone wants to read about, which is basically her life. For the life of me, I was trying to remember the title of... Oh, out of the darkness.
Out of the
darkness. I'm so happy I remember that. Out of the darkness. And she's on a book trail. Her book trail sees her go back to Woodsboro. And already we've seen 2 murders by the time she's only set foot into the door. Like, she must go on an all-inclusive holiday and think to herself, well, like, meet a waitress and kind of go, well, that's your throat slashed in about 2 weeks' time. Do you know what I mean?
Like, girl, stay at home.
Like,
stay the fuck at home.
I am not going on a staycation with that bitch anywhere because I will end up gutted and hanging from a car park rafter in about 2 days. Like, honestly, I'm not having it.
Oh my
And then,
God.
of course, you know, you've got Dewey and Gail Weathers, who are now married and they are living back in Woodsboro. Gail is not happy because she was this big, massive television star, and now she's kind of local lady, you know, doing the weather news and bits and bobs. And it just kind of kicks off from there. But interestingly enough, we see more of Sidney Prescott's family. We see more of the people who we wouldn't have met prior because, you know, her mother had been murdered many, many moons ago. Her father, talk about, you know, all-inclusive holidays. He's never at home. He's never here.
I was just about to ask that. I'm like, what's going on there?
Every single scream, except for one where he's been tied up for the last 6 days. Every single one, that man is either on business or he's like, you know, sipping a pina colada on a beach in Mexico. I can't cope. He is scathing away the place, like completely free of any sort of murderous activities in his life.
Because he saw what was going on with Sydney and he said, I need to get the fuck out of here. Get me to Cancun quick.
He sees something and he goes, right, that's it, lads, I'm over here. Get that fire exit door, Devon, I'm off. And he's
Obsessed.
gone. He's
Obsessed.
gone. A big thing that people talked about seemed to be the filter, because across the whole lot of Scream 4, there just seemed to be this Vaseline filter to almost make it look, you know, RuPaul wig line, you know, season 10, that it just was trying to blur it out.
Yeah, that's
And
very interesting.
It was supposed to be a point of to kind of give it this old school feel, and there's been rumour that they're going to release it without that filter, and I would really, really love to see that. But a massive thing for me was the introduction of Hayden Panettiere, whose character Kirby became this cult phenomenon, classic character, because it was the is she, isn't she, when it came to being murdered. Because obviously, I think her scene when she is being murdered, by the way, spoilers, sorry.
That's absolutely fine. Yeah, we're here to spoil. Yeah,
We're here to spoil.
Yeah.
Her scene being murdered, for me, you know, listing off the name of horror films while she's looking at her friend / nearly boyfriend / murderer be killed, and she's listing off all these amazing horror films for him to be murdered, inverted commas, and then for her 20 seconds later to, you know, be stabbed in the stomach and then to reveal the killer. It just caused this furore that when Scream 6 was brought back, everybody was screaming, bring back Kirby, bring back Kirby Reed, like we need to see her again. And then lo and behold, Scream 6, there she is. Scream 5, they teased it. And I love an Easter egg. Maybe not a Taylor Swift Easter egg, but I love a film Easter egg. And when you saw that YouTube clip when Scream 5 was released and it was like Kirby Reed tells her story, the world imploded, because it was just this massive new whole arc that we were going to bring into the next film.
Yeah.
And I think that she was a standout star. And look, now there's rumors that she's going to get her own like sideline gig with Scream, and Kirby could be like solving other murders in other Ghostface ways.
Do you think she could take over, like, because I know obviously with the upcoming, it's Scream 7, right? We're up to Scream 7 now. Like Neve Campbell is coming back as Sidney Prescott.
Mm-hmm.
Could we see Kirby overtaking her maybe? Or is the franchise like too close to Sydney? You know what I mean? Like, it feels like it can't be one without the other.
Well, don't forget, we didn't have her in Scream 6, right?
Yeah.
And yes, she was right to do what she wanted to do because she's been the heroine of that franchise for so many years. And without her, we wouldn't have followed along and been such big fans, right? Do I think Kirby could hold her own outside of Sydney? No. I think a little sideline gig, nothing like the MTV series that was released for 2 seasons. That was probably the worst thing I've seen.
I was going to ask you about that because I didn't have time to watch it for this and I wanted to keep the focus on the films, but it's bad, question mark? Yes.
Oh my God, it's awful,
okay,
question mark.
Why? Why doesn't it work for you as a TV series?
Do you know, like, remember Sweet Valley High?
Yes.
Yeah. It's like watching Mean Girls and then watching Sweet Valley High.
Okay.
It's the same thing, but just really badly shot. And MTV should not have been given the rights to that show. And even when they brought the real Ghostface mask into season 2, and they brought Roger L. Jackson, who obviously is the voice of Ghostface, they brought him in. but it was just so cheaply made, and it wasn't at a time where TV was getting these big budgets and, you know, they were making movie-style television programs. It just was not that sort of thing. So it just doesn't work on its own. And also now I just think, leave it alone. Leave it alone. Don't try and do a TV series unless it's going to be, you know, Kevin Williamson, who's written the majority of the Scream films, and the right people to do the right job of it.
Yeah.
Do you know?
Absolutely. I know we talked about the Kirby of it all, but at the time, because I think one of the reasons why Scream is like so consistently praised and why people love it so much is not even necessarily, like, obviously there are people that will come to it for the slasher kind of horror, like, scare factor of it, but like essentially with every Scream, it's like a mystery. It's you're trying to figure it out. From watching it at the time, were you able to figure it out, or were you surprised at the end? And like, how has the mystery kind of aged for you now as we kind of get further past it?
So I'm one of the very, very few people who doesn't like Jill Roberts as a murderer.
Yeah.
Like when she was revealed as the second killer and almost the main protagonist, I just thought she was too weak. She didn't give me the fact that what had happened and I know it's like, you know what, we take the piss and kind of go, well, how did he murder her? Like she, you know, all these, like the weight of the person, the height of the person. But when they revealed her as the killer, I just kind of went, I get the storyboard, but I would have rather that she was just like this matriarch of the murders and she'd chosen two guys to kind of help her do the big murders, because it was just not realistic. And even she was a bit feeble when it came to her fighting Sydney. Do you know what I mean? It was almost like a beanpole going up against a beanpole when she was trying to wrestle her around the thing and throw her on the table. I just didn't think it was believable. Now, I am one of the very few people who thinks that, because a lot of people
No, I agree
love
with you.
her.
It's not even necessarily that I don't love her, but I remember at the time watching it, and like my rewatch today was the first time I've watched it probably since I saw it in the cinema.
Yeah.
And I remember kind of having that same feeling of being like, I just kind of don't buy it. And it's just the whole thing of like, it's because you've the familial connection and stuff like that. But beyond that, and like, look, Emma Roberts is good. Emma Roberts is Scream Queen extraordinaire generally. But I was just a bit like,
the aunt. If it had been Emma Roberts and the aunt, I can't remember her name, but if it had been her, I kind of would have loved that, because the aunt gave like demented vibes. My sister's been murdered.
yes.
My whole family's been through this
Yeah.
this run-of-the-mill shit that we've all had to deal with.
Yeah.
And she almost gave like kind of demented vibes even when she was talking to Sydney or just before she'd been murdered. I was kind of thinking, oh, when I watched it first, I remember thinking, it's the two of them. It's the aunt and it's
Because that would make sense. And then it's like, because they're accomplices, but one can do the shit that the other one can't.
yeah.
You know?
And also there's a big connection to the prior story. There's a big connection because she is part of Sydney's past. I don't like even say for Scream 5, where it was the boyfriend and the friend, because they'd been on a forum on the internet about serial killers and about Sydney's life. I didn't like that. I love to have when there's some sort of big connection. Biggest example, Billy Loomis's mother as the killer in Scream 2, I just thought was absolute genius.
That's such a gag.
Because
That's
obviously-
such a gag. like.
Obviously, they followed the format of whether it's Friday the 13th, where it's the killer's mother. And I remember the Mickey, who was the other killer in Scream 2, saying Billy's mother. Like, that sticks in my head as one of the most iconic murder reveals. Act 3, last stage, final stages. It just sticks out. That's the sort of shit I want when it comes to a killer reveal. Even 6 kind of gave me, I was like, oh, okay. Oh yeah, I like this. And I watched that in the cinema. And because everyone had known my like love of this over the years, I think when the killer was revealed, there was more people looking at me than there was at the cinema, because I was like horrified, but absolutely living in the moment. And that's what these films do for you. It's the murder mystery, the whodunit, with the gore, the fun, and we don't take ourselves too seriously, but Jesus, we take horror serious, and we take this story really, really serious, which is what I felt it lacked in 3, which is why I absolutely despised 3.
Okay. The one thing I will say about 4 is, though, like, it's scarier and gorier than 3, but I still don't think it, like, kind of compares to 1 or 2 in some ways. Like, do
No.
you think Kirby, like, who was the worst death, in your opinion, in the whole franchise? Is it in 4 or is it in another film?
I think it's in 3. I
Okay.
think Parker Posey's
Oh.
character in 3 the what was this? Parker Posey as a character in 3. She played Gail Weathers' character.
It's
And
so good.
Do you love it?
I don't love it.
Jennifer,
I
that's her
think
name.
it's like it's watchable. I don't think it's as bad as people let on, but in some ways, I think they had a lot more to play with regards to like the film setting.
Yeah.
That it just kind of didn't, and then it gets it's like kind of nothing happens in the middle, and then it gets so heavy towards the end. And I think tonally it's a bit more whiplashy than the others. I think what 4 does really well is that it kind of brings back the balance of, yes, there's a lot of humour in the writing, but it's not too like, we're not having these big, real comedic, nearly kind of slapsticky interactions between the characters, and then this like monumentally dark thematically. You know, like, whereas with 4, I think it like got it. It was like, we're a horror film first, but we could be funny in the writing, but like fundamentally this is a slasher film, you know?
This was the problem, was because 1, 2 and 3 had to come out so quickly because back then momentum was key. So you had to knock out the next film pretty quickly after that, after the one prior, to really, really land the audience. Whereas 4, New Decade, New Rules, they had 10 years to refocus the story. And it's almost what 4 did and what 5 then did, the whole return to Woodsboro. There is a formula. We're going to stick to that formula because it works and then go forward with it. You know, that sort of way. I just felt that 3, obviously the story should have been different. But the finale of 3 with Rowan Bridger as the director, as her long lost brother, like that was the best thing. And that fight sequence between her and him in the dark room while the movie was playing in the background, that to me goes down as cinematic genius, because I'm actually getting goosebumps even thinking about it. And to think then that there should have been 2 killers, and I can't remember the reason, because it should have been Rowan Bridger and the girl who played Sydney as the killer.
Ah, yes.
And they were either partners or else she had a connection to Sydney in a previous life or something along those lines. But the final act of 3 is the best. There's a lot of talk about the final act of 4 with the hospital bed. And, you know, like, even I was watching some stuff this morning, and obviously Jill Roberts' character is in the hospital. Sydney's recovering, Dewey's recovering, everyone's recovering. And all of a sudden Jill Roberts is allowed to walk the corridors. And there's not a single soul. There's not even a woman with jelly and ice cream on a trolley walking up that corridor, and there's your woman just going in, finding bedpans and kicking the hell out of people in the middle of rooms. And not only that, I didn't even hear, could Dr. O'Reilly please come to the 3rd floor ward, please? Not a single thing, not a thing. But that's where the camp and the stupid of Scream, like, if you're going in to be like, I'm watching The Substance and I want everything to have a story and everything to have a tail end. No, there's huge plot holes across the Scream genre and across the Scream franchise. I think if you're there to critique that, I don't think you're a true horror fan, if I'm being brutally honest. There's a difference between being a horror fan and being a critic.
Okay.
And I think that I lean into the fact that I'm not the smartest person in the world. So when I watch these things and then a critic will say, did you not see that coming, or did you not see the plot hole? I kind of go, I'm not here for the plot hole. I'm here for the popcorn and gore and murder. That's all I want to see.
Yeah. The health service is fucked in Woodsboro too, girls. What can I say?
Sorry, they can't get a doctor or a nurse.
They can't get a doctor.
Band. Can't even get a cleaner.
The original ending of 3, or what they had talked about previously, I think Matthew Lillard had said in an interview in 2009 that like Stu was going to come back and he was going to be that he had like somehow survived and was in prison, and that he was orchestrating ghost face attacks from prison with like high school students, and they were ultimately going to end up targeting Sydney.
Yeah.
So that could have been, but like, again, I don't really know if that would have worked. What do you think? I know we're flipping between 3 and 4 here, but I think to talk about 4, you have to talk about 3 as well.
Well, I think the discussion of if you're a horror fan, you discuss all of them. Especially if you're a Scream fan, you discuss all of them. Yes, 4 was a kickoff to a new generation, but you know, you are going back and forth and forward and back. I think that idea isn't over yet. And even he was on Kelly Clarkson or Drew Barrymore. I know, Drew Barrymore, clearly. And she said, would you like to see Stu come back? And he went, yeah, I absolutely would. And there's just something about the Kirby of it all that makes me think, is that a possibility? Is that something that we're possibly looking at?
Yeah.
Do I think it's a far-fetched idea? Yes. any of the Scream filmmakers, be it the ones from the last two iterations or, Kevin Williamson and the Wes Craven team gone by, do they listen to the fans? No, I really, really don't think so. But I think the fandom of Scream thinks that they're cleverer than they are. And I'm one of them. And I follow a lot of them on Twitter and on socials and stuff like that. And I think that they do think that they're clever because they're like, oh, I thought that idea and I wrote it on Reddit. I'm like, yeah. Because I'm sure the people of Paramount are Googling Reddit kind of going, what do we do with this one? What do you want to do? Like, they're not doing that.
But you know what? I think some teams do. And I think that ends up being as a detriment to, maybe not them, but I think it is starting to happen more and more where I think they're getting more cognizant of social media and people playing sleuths. And I think it's kind of better nearly if they don't, because I think it can negatively impact a franchise, I think, And
I'd love to go over, I've bought the book, which I think is actually, it's not called Out of Darkness, but it basically goes over 1 to 4 and it kind of gives you the storyline of all the different books. I would love to kind of go over the old scripts, as in, because obviously they make dummy scripts, so there's probably 3 scripts in a thing, and if anything gets leaked, which is what happened in Scream
2, which I found fascinating. It was like one of the first victims of like internet leakage, and they had to rewrite the whole thing or so. And then they came out and they were like, that actually wasn't a real script anyway, lol. But I mean, who knows?
It was a real script, and even in the book, it states that somebody from production had said, yeah, that was supposed to be what was to happen, and then it just didn't. And then they were like, oh no, we have to. No, they didn't want to give the power over to the fandom by saying, oh yeah, look, this is what's actually happened. Do you know what I mean?
So one of the reviews I had here, I think this is the Rotten Tomatoes critical consensus of Scream 4. It says, the franchise is showing its age, but Scream 4 is undeniably an improvement over its predecessor with just enough meta humour and clever kills. Because I think, again, that's what it gets, as like, obviously 3 is very meta because it's like, it's a
Hollywood.
film, it's a film within a film and stuff like that, but it nearly kind of gets too up its own ass about it in a way, whereas like I think the opening of Scream 4 is so good, like the kind of you think it's the opening every time, and then it's the fake out with Anna Paquin and Kristen Bell, and they're so funny and her delivery is so deadpan. She nearly didn't take that role because she didn't think she'd be able to live up to the Drew Barrymore of it all, which I thought was interesting.
And there's more to that. Have you watched the extended edit of that?
No, I haven't.
There's an extended edit of that goes way more into that Anna Paquin and Kristen Bell story and makes it way meatier than what you see in the final edit.
Okay.
And even the opening to Kill to like Scream 3, that had a whole different take. That wasn't supposed to be that his girlfriend was supposed to survive.
Okay. So Cotton was supposed to die and she was supposed to live.
Cotton was supposed to die and she was supposed to survive, and there was a whole other thing. But again, there's a whole different edit where you see a much longer fight sequence between his girlfriend and Ghostface at the time, and then he gets involved. Those extended edits, to me, I live for. And I'm always like, why did you take that out? I know the film has to be a certain time. But the fandom live for that shit. And I can't even believe that there's not a world where we can go and see these edits and see these extended things and all the things that we were promised that happened, but they cut them. Give me the footage. Like, I will happily just go through it and watch it again and again and again.
You're selling this fandom to me so much. As much as I like loved watching these and getting into this, and now I'm like, I kind of get why people are so fanatical about these. Because I couldn't get it. I was like, I didn't realise like 2 was as beloved as it is, like that it's kind of kept up the, critically, like it has been pretty good. And these newer iterations are also kind of, again, critically kind of favoured and doing really well. I thought we were just kind of living off the nostalgia or the legacy of the first one, but it has really carried through with the exception of 3 and for some people 4, but as you said, I know you love 4.
There hasn't been a slasher film franchise that has lived up. I know what you did last summer, and that tried to kind of get into the foray, but it never really did. And I think that because Scream was such an iconic slasher, and it almost kicked off so many people wanting to get into the horror genre and wanting to kind of lean into that I still think it holds its weight in gold. Even a bad Scream film, for me, is still a good Scream film.
Okay.
And I think Scream is the only thing that I have a fandom about. Like, I have this fanatical love. I don't talk about this like to anything, like to anybody else or to anything. Like, and there's nothing else that has my attention as much as something when it comes to Scream. I remember being in the gym when the 5 trailer came out. I nearly fell off the treadmill, then had to go and sit in my car to get my laptop to watch it on a big, big screen. Like, it's just, I don't know. I think they say the whole thing, I'm not taking this as a gay thing, but they always say, though, gays love horror
Well, I was just about to ask you why the LGBTQ plus community are obsessed with Scream. Like,
Yes.
why do you think that is? Or like, is there a tangible reason in your
I
opinion?
saw somebody talk about it on RuPaul's Drag Race UK this week, and they were saying it about how, you know, horror is so the freaks and the geeks, and it's all the different people, and the fandom is kind of the freaks and the geeks, and maybe it's why we all have this one love of this one thing. It's like, if you're a fan of horror, you're probably going to be a fan of drag, and that's all the alternative side of things. And I think that just the LGBTQ plus community, just to have that kind of, we love to be the freaks and the geeks, the difference, the what's out of the norm. And horror is, you know, it's pretty out of the norm, realistically. Like, you're loving something, you're loving people being murdered, or you're loving ghosts, you're loving vampires, you're loving, you know, spirits, whatever it could be. Like, it's just a little bit different to what day-to-day life looks like.
Yeah. So Scream 4 has 60% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. It's like the second lowest. Yeah, just ahead of Scream 3 with 41%. But like, I don't know, like, it's gotten a couple of critical reappraisals since, and even you've like referenced it about how it talks about social media and uses social media. The one my skin starts crawling when there's any kind of reference to social media and stuff in media and popular culture, because I just think it dates it and it ages it so much. And I think this is an example of where it actually, with maybe a few exceptions, it actually kind of doesn't, and it actually foreshadowed a lot of what we know about, like, especially like a lot of the darker side of social media, about how like crime is so often like filmed and live streamed and recorded. Like, there's a lot in the scripting of this that's like kind of winking and nodding and, you know, pointing to the future of what we know of like real life crime, horror movies in general. It does it like very well, I would say.
It was the first, I think it was definitely the first one in 4 where, you know, he had the head cam on, and they were obviously watching everything that was happening day to day to day, and they wanted to go back over the footage and stuff like that. And even, you know, the cameras that were placed in Scream 4, there's a watch party that happens every year that the Film Club of Woodsboro do as part of Halloween every year, and they watch Stab all the way through, Stab 1, Stab 2, Stab 3, all the way to the end. And it really showed that the killer was way more advanced, or the killers were way more advanced than what the students were, because, you know, they were using this head cam, and at this party, which is basically set in a barn, all of a sudden these really good cameras are being set up, and Gail is the person to kind of see the footage and kind of go, oh crap, I have to go and save the day. And that's where we nearly lose Gail Weathers in that moment. And
My fave.
even when you look at 6, where we nearly lost her there, I didn't want to, but there is times where I kind of go, I think we're going to have to lose somebody soon. Even when we lost Dewey, like, if you remember that in Scream 5, in Scream 5, in the hospital scene, and it's like, it's a pleasure. Like, come on. Or it's an honour, he says, as he murders Dewey. Like, my bones are like, you know, all that. Those sorts of things, they're what makes the key moments of the franchise moving forward. When have we seen, bar Transformers and, you know, what's that car film? Too Fast, Too Furious. When are you later in 7 movies down and we're still going to it?
Yeah.
It's very, very rare. Okay, Aliens, yeah, great franchise. They've taken a break. They've come back again. Too Fast, Too Furious. Men love cars. Everyone loves cars. We love fast things. We love crashing shit into shit. Transformers, again, we love crashing shit into shit.
Yeah.
That's just what we do. This, having Scream on 7 and possibly go into 8 or 9 or a sidebar series, it's pretty iconic. And it hasn't been done in horror since the old Wes Craven days. There's a formula there. Wes Craven was the man who created Nightmare on Elm Street. Wes Craven is the man who created Scream. You know, the formula itself, when it works, the gig works. And you just have to fall in love and stick with it.
Is there any character that you don't think works in Scream 4, or any character that you just don't kind of love their...
I need to get her. Mindy. There,
Mindy.
I need to get her name. So are you saying Scream 4?
Scream 4, yes.
Sorry. In Scream 4, I hate to say it, and I know she's the killer. Jill Roberts just doesn't work for me.
That's fair.
In the whole film.
Yeah.
Like, she just didn't give me the ooh-ah sensation. I just was never warm to her. She was this moany girl, moany bitch the whole way through. I'm going to call her. She was a moany bitch the whole way through the film.
Yeah.
And was just always this, oh, poor me. It was real.
Yeah.
It was real. Paris Hilton, oh my God, poor me. Like, it just did not give me what I needed from a lead girl who I thought that if she wasn't the murderer, they were trying to pass it on to her. And because she had a famous auntie,
in that sense, it would have made sense for her to inherit it.
it would have made sense for her to inherit because she had a famous family who maybe was, the reason why they were pushing her up. But I thought to myself, this could be where you lose me if they pass it on to her and she has to be the new heroine because Neve Campbell is just, you can't take it away from her.
Yeah.
Bitch going to be 50 this year.
Yeah.
And she's about to go into Scream 7. And I think this story is for her. I think this is her story. I think we're going to see Mark Kincaid back. I think her family are going to be involved. Rumour mill has it that the lead kill of 7 is something to do with Mark Kincaid's family, and he then goes.
Mark Kincaid is the policeman
who is now her
Scream 3,
husband.
Which Patrick Dempsey only got that role like 2 days before they started shooting.
What he said now is, as of about 2 days ago, is that I'm interested, but I haven't seen a script yet. So all this thing of like, oh, it's supposed to be, and it could be in the filmmakers' minds, they could be thinking Mark Kincaid could be the first kill because Patrick Dempsey being a first kill for Scream 7 in the similar era to Drew Barrymore, being this famous person or nearly famous person or whatever, being the first kill, and then him only having to film for 2 or 3 days.
Yeah, maybe he just doesn't want to sign up to the whole thing.
And his story's a bit stretched.
Yeah.
Like his story was a bit stretched in Scream 3. So
he's so hot in it though.
Him
and Sydney do very good chemistry.
They do, and he was sexy. I've never wanted hair longer than when I saw Mark Kincaid kind of like brush his hair back.
Yeah.
I was a bit like, oh, I wish my hair was curly like that. I wish I was a policeman, and I wish I was married to Sidney Prescott. Well, no, actually, I wish I wasn't, because then I'd just been murdered.
No. Ashley, did you watch Twilight? Have you seen Twilight?
No.
So Ashley Greene, who plays Alice in Twilight, people know she's like Edward's psychic freak vampire sister. She almost got the role of Jill, which I to be honest, don't think would have worked.
No. I think the character of Jill was just a little bit weak. I think that she needed to be a little bit older and a little bit wiser, because are we really trusting like a girl who's in 50 year to mastermind this whole big plot? Like,
girls in 50 year don't know anything. They're crazy.
I could barely get a bus in 50 year, let alone fucking mastermind the murder of like my auntie and my sister and my friends. Do you know what I mean?
Okay, well then let's recast then. Who would you cast now as Jill if she needs to be older, in your opinion?
Who would I cast now as Jill? Oh, like, I think if you could have had, and I know it's a bit of a weird thing, but a Melissa Barrera or a Jenna Ortega style person back then.
Okay.
If we were to do a remake and swap it and think that she'd never done 5 or 6 and that they could have that. Jenna Ortega, because girl has psycho in her, and I can tell that girl has psycho in her. So you just know that would be a really, really really iconic thing.
Lauren Graham, our Gilmore Girls fave, also almost played Jill's mum. She was like 3 days into principal photography for it and then had to leave for some reason.
And the Sydney people, there was big talk about who was going to play. Tori Spelling was supposed to play Sydney originally, who then she went on to play Sydney in the film of Stab in Scream 2.
Yeah.
They'd made the film and then Tori Spelling played her, but she had actually originally been lined up to play Sydney. And I think another Heather Graham was supposed to play Drew Barrymore's character, because Heather Graham was more famous at the time.
Yeah.
And Wes Craven, who is always a big fan of the underdogs and the up-and-comers, which what I love is we see more of that now. Like for Jenna Ortega and, Melissa Barrera to take a whole franchise like Scream and make it their own. You wouldn't have seen that when it came to 2 or 3. They wanted people with a name. They wanted the big star at the time to be in the show. Whereas now I think that the cult classic is better to leave it to a newbie, because they're out to really, really make the brand work. They're not going to sign on for one. I don't want anyone to sign on to one Scream film unless they're a disposable character who's going to be murdered. Do you know that sort of a way?
Yeah.
Like get the good people who are going to stick around. Even the Melissa Barrera stuff and the Jenna Ortega, as awful as it is, it'll be weird for them not to do this one, because I think they did such a good job of 6. But I am intrigued to see what they do with Sydney, Gail, and not the core 4 anymore, but the rest of the core 4.
Yeah.
If they bring back Mason Gooding Jr., if they bring back Mindy's character,
Wait, I interrupted you when you were about to go on a rant
hate
about
her.
Mindy. Talk to me about Mindy.
Oh, I hate her so bad. She should have been murdered on the Lewis, and she should have just stayed dead on the Lewis. Like, the end of 6 is great, but I didn't need everyone to be survived. And Mason Gooden Jr., the fact that he was butchered like a pig on a spit in that cinema, in that theatre room, and yet was just like, I'm grand. It's just a few cuts. No, like, he was butchered.
Let that fella die.
He let him die, and take your sister with you.
What
I
a
always
sentence.
say it. She was murdered on a train, and I'm always like, leave her on the Lewis. She's on the red line. Leave her alone.
Okay, so how are you feeling about Scream 7 then? And as you said, you hinted out there, obviously, Melissa Barrera no longer involved, having been fired. Neve Campbell is returning. Everyone's
Yeah.
very excited about that.
Yeah.
What do you think though? Like, is it going to live up to it, or like, are you kind of cautiously optimistic, or?
My worry here is that Kevin Williamson is setting foot in as director. Now, Kevin wrote 1, 2. He had a hand in 5. He's had his hand throughout into it, but he obviously wrote some of the more iconic ones that we love and cherish. But he also then wrote 3. So, but then we all have bad days.
Yeah.
Him setting foot as director as his first directorial debut terrifies me.
Okay.
Because if you're not a director and now you're doing something that's so iconic, I get that you know the arc and the story of all these people's lives, but I'm just a little bit terrified that he's not equipped enough to know how to really, really handle it. But Sydney wouldn't sign on, or Neve Campbell wouldn't sign on. Courtney Cox isn't going to sign on. And if Mark Kincaidson signs on and Hayden Panettiere, are they all really going to sign on if it's not a really good script? Like, is Sydney actually is Neve Campbell going to go, yeah, it's a clown's show, but I'll do it anyway for the money? I don't think that's going to happen, especially if, and it terrifies me to say, if this is the last. If this is the last. Do you know what I mean? Because 7 equal that to kind of the 3 situation, because this is the third time lucky isn't always the right motive. Look at Scream 3. That's why it stopped completely, because it was just so awful that people said, okay, park this. We don't want any Scream for a while. And then obviously the appetite 10 years later was kicked in, and it was kicked in then a couple of years ago for 5 and 6. I'm terrified, but I'm terrified every time that they do this, because I don't want this experience to taint everybody else to watch Scream and to fall in love with the genre the way I do. So it's almost like a Swiftie with Taylor. You know, I have the same. I'm like, oh, I love what you do. I don't want you to ruin it. And that's where my terror comes. But I hope to God that when I watch the trailer, and then when I get to sit in an auditorium and get to watch it, that I leave the same way, especially as I did with 6. I walked at a 6 and I was like, I'm happy with that. I'm really happy with that.
Okay. So if Scream 4 isn't the true flop of the franchise, what is? I think I know your answer, but
I think it's 3.
okay.
I definitely think it's 3. I think 3 was what ended the trilogy. And you can hear Wes Craven say, oh yeah, it was only ever supposed to be a trilogy. That's a lie. Because if you're making bank, pal, you're going to continue this. I think it ended it because it was so bad. And I do think that the critics, or the change up of the script because of the Columbine murders, I think that was a big change of it. And moving into Hollywood did kind of ruin it. But I definitely think that 3 killed it off. But then when I see people's, like, they put their numbers as to where everyone's favourite is, I'm always like, people have 3 in their top 3. What who hurt you as a child? Like, who played Ghostface in your life? Because it's just not in mine whatsoever. 4 is pretty top for me, but everybody...
Well, go on, rank them then. What's your Scream ranking?
Oh God, this is gonna be pretty controversial. 6, 2, 1, 4, 5, 3.
Okay.
But 6 being the top is a
That's kind of insane.
Isn't it? Isn't it? I think 6 and 2 really sit side by side.
Yeah.
They really
2 makes sense. 2 makes sense where it is.
6
is just...
No, Fionnuala, come on.
I appreciate bravery on this podcast. I'm
I
just
shouldn't.
worried for what the Scream fans are going to say to you.
I shouldn't, because I've just turned my back on Neve Campbell completely. Like, I've literally gone, who are you?
Who are you?
Have you a wristband to be at this party? But I promise you, I think 6...
It speaks to how good that cast is, though, you know?
100%. You didn't come out of 6 kind of going, I didn't personally, and I know a few of my friends, like Billy Passmore, who's a producer on Ireland AM.
Shout out, Billy.
Shout out, Billy. Myself and him, our WhatsApp group, our WhatsApp chat is Scream. We don't talk about work. We probably talked about less work than we do about Scream. So anything that ever clicks in, and he will murder me for saying that 6 is better than 2. But look, I'm here. I'm falling on my knife. I'm falling on my Ghostface knife.
You got to do it. You got to do it. Okay. Ultimately then, Paul, why do you think Scream 4 flopped, and why do you think people should revisit it?
Everybody, you know, should go back and watch it, or if you've never watched it, watch it now, because we put so much pressure on ourselves. We put so much pressure on film in that time of life that everything needed to be A-class, everything needed to be Oscar-worthy. And they mentioned it in themselves, the meta of it all. It was all because the internet took over, and every Tom, Dick and Mary had a platform where they could say, that's shit, and it almost influenced us not to get involved. That's why Scream 4 flopped, because we were all too busy being bastard and sheep where we should have been shepherds, and we should have gone, this is iconic. This should lead the new franchise for 4, 5 and 6. And then, 10 years down the line, let's do, 7, 8 and 9 and have the Melissa Barreras and the Jenna Ortegas lead that new franchise. So I just think that we were all a little bit sheepish to not let 4 be the cult classic that it was.
There you go. The judgment is rendered. I couldn't have said it. Couldn't have said it better myself. a great kickstart to a restart to a franchise. In
Yes,
my opinion.
100%.
Like, it's not going to get as good as that. Paul, it's been such a pleasure. Where can people find you, should they want to discuss your Scream ranking, to debate over it? Where are you?
Like, I'll give you my actual number. Like, if anyone wants to discuss this with me, like, I will have this out with you. And by the way, first of all, thank you so much for letting me come on and rant about Scream for 45 minutes.
This has been such a pleasure to really dig into it in a way that I've never been able to. So
I've never been able to have this conversation. This is the first time outside of my friends groups that I'm able to have this discussion. So for me, if there's podcasts about Scream around the world, I'm in, bitch. At It's Paul Ryder across all socials. And find me there. Thank you so much for having me.
Paul Ryder, thank you so much for joining me on Flop Culture. See you again.
See you again.